Hey guys, it's Tasha here at San Diego Comic-Con 2025, and I'm here with these lovely, beautiful ladies. We're going to give a little introduction. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yes, hi, I'm Pillar Flynn. I'm a producer for animation, and I'm currently also directing my own animated short.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Crommett. I am founder and CEO of Collective Moxie. We're an inclusive global storytelling consultancy agency and production company.
And hi, I'm Sydney Bright. I'm head of global animation at Webtoon Productions, and I help people tell amazing stories in the animation space.
These ladies are about their business. I don't know if you guys caught that. I caught it. And we're here to talk about representation, which one of my favorite topics to talk about. So I just want to get the ground rolling and kind of say, what does a representation mean to each of you? If you guys had to define it, how would you define it?
Representation to me means seeing yourself not only on screen, but through other people's eyes, and through representation and specificity, I think we can connect more broadly to everyone around us.
Yeah, representation means to me, and I'll explain it, is seeing your Betty. And what I mean by that is that Ugly Betty was the first time I ever saw myself reflected on screen with the incomparable America Ferrera. I'm Puerto Rican and Cuban American, and I had never seen a Latina woman working in a workplace that was not designed for her, but that she did not sacrifice her Latinness and her identity as part of that. And so for me, every day, representation means that every single person in the world has their moment of seeing their Betty and those who are around them.
I think allowing space for everyone to get to express themselves in the way that they are, in the culture that they come from, and the stories that they want to tell, and making sure that those voices get to be heard.
Yeah, I would have to agree with all three of you. I know that representation for myself is just being relatable, like looking at something, someone, and saying like, oh my gosh, I experienced that as well. I feel those feelings as well. Julianne kind of touched on my next question, which was great. Thank you for making my job easier.
Anytime, we're flowing here.
That's how good she is.
It was, who or when did you first see your representation, and how did that make you feel?
Well, I'll just start us off because I talked about it a bit already. You know, when I first saw America Ferrera, I was 20 years old already. I was in college. So I had gone my whole childhood not seeing anybody that really represented an experience like my own. And the really deep takeaway now in hindsight that I think I subconsciously took from that was that I didn't have to choose. I didn't have to choose between parts of myself because, in the famous words, we are all multitudes. And so if we are that, then why do things have to be in opposition from each other or in boxes? And I think for me, that moment of I don't have to choose with Ugly Betty was unlocking, and now allows me to drive and create in a way that also allows me to greenlight myself. And this is something that we were talking a lot about earlier in our panel, which is when you see that representation, it unlocks something in you to be like, oh, I can do that. And then the green light, so to speak, becomes possible. It becomes inevitable, actually, in many ways.
I actually think the first time I felt like I saw my family represented on screen was Jane the Virgin and the lovely Encanto, which we've talked about quite a bit today. But I think I have the great fortune of having many women in my family. I'm one of 5 kids. We have one amazing brother and 4 siblings that are sisters. And I think getting to see the generational representation, the cultural representation, and I think honestly, it's happened more, I think, in my 20s after that I've actually gotten to see more of this on screen. I don't think we had that same level of representation when we were younger. Really, the only show that had diversity in the animation space was like the Proud Family. And that was so revolutionary for so many people. But I think it's so great that we have so many touchstones today to really help encourage and I think empower not just the people who aren't in entertainment yet, but those of us who've been doing it for a long time. Is like, yeah, let's keep making space. Let's keep telling stories so that more people can see themselves represented.
Yeah.
And for me, it was actually a project that I was lucky enough to work on. Elena of Avalor was the first time I saw myself represented on screen, not only as a Latina, but also as a compassionate leader, which is why it was something so important to me. Growing up in this industry, when I first started many years ago, I was told that I would never be a producer because I wasn't tough enough, I wasn't mean enough to the artists, I wasn't aggressive enough. And when I heard that, even though it was my dream to be a creative leader in this industry, my heart broke, and I thought, well, if I have to be that way, I guess I can't be a producer. But something magical happened, which is as soon as I let that go of what I needed to become, I remained who I am. And that authenticity actually is what ended up elevating me and making me become a leader. So when I saw Elena of Avalor, and like I say, not only was she a queen of this realm based on Latin folklore, but to us it was so important to represent her as an intelligent, compassionate leader that cared about her kingdom, that treated everyone like a family. That is when I truly saw myself represented, and it was the moment where I felt like I needed to, it had to be my mission to create more representation like that for other little girls that, hopefully won't have to wait until they're, in their late 30s to see themselves finally represented on screen.
Yeah. It's really cool because you guys kind of gave me even a different view of representation, because it can be about emotional representation, family representation. It's not just about the visual of like seeing women or seeing African American or Latino women. It can even surpass that. It's funny you mentioned animation, because I remember growing up watching Doug.
Oh yeah.
And my hair used to be really blonde. And I saw that in Patty Mayonnaise. Like a brown girl with yellow blonde hair. And I said, oh, I'm Patty Mayonnaise. And like even just something as simple as animation, I just felt that representation. So that was cool that you touched on that. How do you think representation, I hate to get political, I know we don't like to, but how do you think it's affected now in this atmosphere? Do you think that we can still push it forward, or do you think there are some obstacles?
I think it's become just a buzzword for buzzword's sake. And I think the reality is the tapestry of, at least if we're talking about like the America in general or the United States, we've always been diverse. There's always been a beautiful tapestry of what makes America America. And I think for whatever word that has, or for whatever reason that's become such a hot button word, but I think the reality is we've always had diverse stories. And I think to your point about representation going beyond just skin color or cultural backgrounds, you can have the same upbringing as someone else from your community. And on paper, sure, you guys might be the same, but in terms of your personal experiences and the things that you've overcome, those may be very different. And I think the reality is we have to make space for everyone's ability to tell story and the representation across that, because that's just the human experience.
And I think it's interesting in this time, we've been talking about this as we've been hanging out here at Comic-Con, is you're starting to feel, I think, a real hunger and desire for folks to even explore more deeply in their own storytelling or to consume other folks' stories, because I think the hunger increases when it feels like there's a pushback to one's own human existence. There's this resilience that sort of comes out. This resolve is the word I keep using. And in the last month or so, I would say, I've started to feel a really deep resolve from a really diverse group of people, just kind of saying, you know what, Julianne, like we have got to keep going, and we have to. And it's almost like you can't tell you tell me I can't do that. Well, watch this, you know, and you're feeling that kind of energy back. And what that says to me, you know, my coach and I, by the way, I cannot talk enough. I'm a founder of a company. I'm a big believer in coaches. This is a whole long other like interview and conversation. But my business coach, she says this to me all the time, which is in order to have a breakthrough, you have to have a breakdown. And what I'm feeling like we're on the cusp of is a real breakthrough in storytelling, in the ways we tell, in the ways we make, in the diversity of the stories we tell, because we're feeling that hunger now more than ever. And I think that to me is just waking me up every morning and being like, I'm going to get strong. I'm going to lift those weights because I've got to keep on, you know, pushing the ball. And so do all of us together. I think that's the other part is in community, nobody makes alone. So we've got to do it together.
Yeah, I was telling them earlier that one of my favorite new quotes is, a river dammed by frustration carves a new course through stone. And that's what it feels like right now is we are water. You know, nothing can stop us. Even if walls get put in our way, there's other ways around. And like these both were saying, I have never in my life seen so many people stand up and decide to unite to create a project, to do something separately, to create their own podcasts, animated short, webtoons, comics, and just break free from, you know, whatever they think is holding them back or they're needing permission from. We don't need permission, and we're discovering that. And by finding kind of our own little groups of tribes of people that support and elevate us and see our own worth, that is all we need. We don't need money. We don't need studio
Yeah.
backing. We just need our own passion, time, and each other.
Yeah, I agree with all of those, especially water, because I think water is very powerful.
Yeah.
Especially like even in the flowing of it, or if it crashes, like it's still, it always keeps moving.
Still is.
So I love that
Yes.
quote. That was a
Yeah.
good one. Last question for you guys. Where do you think representation should show up the most? Or in another way to kind of, what the answer I'm looking for is, how do you think people see representation the most? Is it in books? Is it in film? Is it in the classroom? Is it every day? Where do you think it shows up the most for people?
My initial answer is yes, like to all of it.
All of the above.
Right, exactly. I'm like, if it's a Scantron test, everybody remembers those bubbles. I think it's so interesting. We live in this media environment that's actually very fractured in terms of how we consume stories. I talked a little bit about this earlier, but I'm a big believer that you let a story tell you what medium it needs to live in, and that's where it will connect the most. So some things need to be told in 2-minute little pieces, right? Some need to be hour-long episodes of a podcast. Still others need to be a feature film. Still others need to be a webtoon or a comic, right? And I think the real important thing is creatively listen to the story and let it tell you and guide you, because then it's going to reach the most people because it's in the effective delivery mechanism. And I think that's a lot of, in a really fragmented media landscape, especially, I think that's the way, in my opinion, to think about it, because then you're not letting the sort of tail wag the dog, right? You're actually looking at what's happening, and then let that sort of direct me. So that's kind of where I think about how you're effective, right, in reaching people.
I also think social media has just, in many ways, like the cat's out of the bag, right? I think from YouTube and TikTok and just all the ways that we consume media today, that's where you're seeing so much exposure and representation. And I think that the takeaway and so much of the conversation amongst us today has been make things. And I think as young creators, young storytellers, or just young people who have their own experiences, the more you share your story, the more you talk, the more you are engaging on these social platforms, the more you're putting representation out there. And I think you find people on the other side that show up for you in that way. So to me, I actually think we're kind of in one of the most exciting times in that there is no barrier to entry. If you want to create something, if you want to tell a story, if you want to make something, a podcast, etc., just go do it. And I think because we, the creators, can stand behind that and make those things, I think we have the power to be able to make sure that diversity shows up in all forms of media where everyone is kind of consuming and getting on a daily basis.
The expression we've been saying all day is to greenlight yourself. Don't wait for somebody else to give you that green light. And that's what's so powerful around it. How do you stay relevant? You reach people where they are. You don't pretend that folks aren't in places. And I think that's the real piece of it.
And to your point about children, I think especially working in children's animation, that is one place that it's especially important. All aspects are important, but what animation does is it reaches so many young children during their most formative years. And I think we have a responsibility to put out there what the world truly looks like, different versions of what you can be or who you are. And as having worked in children's animation, I've personally gotten to see the effect it's had on kids in classrooms, on teachers. And that's so important because children are still in their little worlds and they're so much more open to different, cultures, races, genders. They don't ask those questions when they watch an animated show. They just love the characters. They love the story. They look for inspiration. They don't question, what the makeup is or where it takes place. And that's such a beautiful thing. So the more of that we can do at younger ages, the better.
Yeah, you spoke to my Patty Mayonnaise little heart. For 5 years, that was my costume.
Oh my God. Banging on a trash can.
That needs to come back.
Drumming on a street light.
Big Duck fan. Well, ladies, thank you for your time. It has been a pleasure. Like I said, you guys taught me a new way to look at representation, and I appreciate that. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Comic-Con.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
having us.
Appreciate it.
So appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Woohoo!
Thank you.
Thank you.